want to show you some detailed explanation about how money really works and the state of mind behind those who adopted the system of money that we now use today. And you must have owned the house first for you to be able to use it as a collateral to back up a loan. And that same house that you're using as a collateral, which is assumed that you owe, which you never even thought of, is the same house that you're being told that you're getting a loan from someone without actually seeing the bank transfer equivalent to the value of that house itself.
Money. Money scares people, or rather I should say, people are afraid of money. If you initially ask people what they think of money, they would either usually tell you they love it or they think it's good, something positive. But when you begin to look at how they view their own relationship with money, without necessarily directly asking them, what do you think your relationship with money is like? You realize that most are actually afraid of money. Money scares people. The first time I ever had an inclination that money is something that people are really afraid of was in one of the first businesses I ever created. And we had a prototype product that we thought would solve certain issues. We've yet to begin marketing it to a target audience. So we found a little over 100 people that would test the prototype and give us feedback. We already knew the amount that we would sell it for. And we told those a little over 100 people that we would sell it to them for about 40% what it's really worth, so long as they're able to give us feedback, and they agreed. When we went to another company that would basically provide us some of the materials for the product that we would create the prototype from, the lady working there gave us a total bill and said, okay, this is the total amount that it's worth. And at that moment, I gave her a credit card. I swiped the credit card and she was a bit shocked. Now, this was basically a mom and pop company, and we used them just to support other small businesses. She was shocked that the amount they asked to create the materials that we would use for our prototype before we start sending it out to those who wanted to test it for us. She was shocked it was just paid out like that, even though to me I knew that credit card was not my money. It was technically other people's money in form of a debt instrument that will be paid back in increments. And of course, my plan was, with the amount of money we get from a little over 100 people that would test the product out, I'll use it to pay some of the monthly bills on that credit card. So this lady was thinking this was something that I just whipped out magically. Now, at that moment, I didn't realize it. About a week later, I ended up realizing she canceled the order. And when I spoke to her, her response was that she's not used to people just making that type of purchase at once, that most people usually go into payment plans. In short, she was kind of afraid. And I'm thinking, is this woman serious? Because now she's delayed the anticipated time for us to release the product to the people who will be testing it for us, and all the other business plans we had lined up. That day, after I went back in there and spoke with her and her husband, it was a family business they had, I realized people are afraid of money. When people don't get something that they're not used to, even though they want it, they crave it, and they deserve it, when they eventually get it, they're afraid of it. However small it is, however big it is, if they are not expecting it, fear comes in their mind, and they themselves will voluntarily deny it. And I've subsequently had other experiences similar to that with a few different characteristics, such as when you hear people provide a response to anything relating to marketing of business. It's like people just hate money. People have this thing whereby if someone is doing something relating to money, they're all of a sudden some villain and something is wrong. And it took me a while to come to the conclusion that most people carry that state of mind with money because they don't know how money works. Their relationship with money is very poor. Now, back then with those experiences, I never really thought about why it could have been that way. I've just always thought it was maybe an oversight on my part. Because whenever anything sort of acts as a hiccup, it's best for you to look at what you could have done better rather than others. But with time and consistency and repeated pattern and cycles, just can't help but realize most people have not been given the most basic introduction to money. Which gives rise to this video. If you really are serious about getting your own affairs together, either using trust or comprehending how certain aspects of business work, financial education is something that cannot be avoided. It is inevitable because it all goes hand in hand. I'm quite certain you've seen this depiction right here that explains the likely manner to which people's faith on paper, currently called money, aka US bills, how it would basically turn around. And in short, it summarizes how people's full faith is backed by nothing and how they enslave themselves by that said full faith. This video right here is mainly a way to give people a wake-up call, which is necessary. And I'm sure most of us, at some point, especially if you're watching a video like this, you have thought about it to some extent also. And you've likely heard others entertain that matter to some extent also.
Let me now bring your attention to a different video. A different video that, in place of revealing the woes and opening the eyes of those who might have not known any better. In this case, I suspect you know a little bit better than the average man and woman going on about their daily businesses, or at least what they assume is their businesses. Since you're aware of that first video to some extent, I want to now introduce you to another video that's in form of an animation, but in place of it telling you certain realities from the perspective of breaking a bubble, I want to show you some detailed explanation about how money really works and the state of mind behind those who adopted the system of money that we now use today. Remember, I've always told you the concept of money is not new at all. And in the beginning, I think about the first 10 minutes of this video with the PPM, the first part, I mentioned that money is just what anyone is willing to use as consideration or accept as value for something else, aka a medium of exchange between one party and the other. And in other posts on Patreon, you would hear me say there are certain principles from one civilization to the other that is still being used today as it relates to money. This animation does a great job in depicting it. This is a Walt Disney animation. I believe it was from the year 1967. Remember, cartoons are primarily meant for children. And one thing that I also think is good about this is part of what I tell you when I say you are in a part of the world with certain privileges. Not many people in other parts of the world have animations of financial education created for their children that adult also can benefit from once their frontal lobe and their reasoning skills has increased beyond being engulfed in the colors and the sounds and the music and the funny characters. As adult, when you watch this animation that I'm about to show, you really get the state of mind and thinking behind the current monetary system besides the fear and the woe me perspective of, well, no one gave you anything and you must have owned the house first for you to be able to use it as a collateral to back up a loan. And that same house that you're using as a collateral, which is assumed that you owe, which you never even thought of, is the same house that you're being told that you're getting a loan from someone without actually seeing the bank transfer equivalent to the value of that house itself. Besides all those mildly depressing aspects, I want to introduce you to a different level of financial education that I don't think many people have yet to bring to the forefront of their minds when it comes to this thing called the birth certificate that many are very interested in. Once you comprehend that money is just what anyone is willing to accept as a medium of exchange, aka to accept it as being valuable for something else that they have, your world will change. And I cannot emphasize it enough to let you realize that money is far more fluid than you think. A very high percent of those seeking after the birth certificate and whatever value they can get from it don't see money from a fluid perspective at all. They come from the position of someone is the bad guy and the villain, and I'm going to take my stuff back. But their state of mind as to what they're trying to take back, they really actually don't know. But their state of mind as to what they're trying to take back, they really actually don't know. These are the things that you need to know for that birth certificate to work for you. Rather than you working for it day after day, you can study all you want. You can gather all the documents you want. If this state of mind that is about to be explained to you here is not one in your mind, what is in those black and white, particularly the different types of PPMs, the convertible, the 506 preferred stock, the 144A, when you start to read it and how it works, the entrepreneur's state of mind involved in it as it relates to the birth certificate and what money really is would not click. So I'm showing this depiction in this video to assist you a little bit more, because I'm certain many people don't really get it, even if they think they do. So listen, and we'll explain as we go along.
Once money really was salt.
Salt? That's hard to believe.
Ah, but that was the pay a Roman soldier would receive.
At one point in time, we all knew money or value exchange was good old trade by barter. I give you one thing, you give me another item, so long as you need what I'm giving you and I need what you are giving me. and what we are exchanging is not overly valuable than the other, then is reasonably considered an equivalent exchange. Once upon a time, on a similar note, salt, one of the oldest elements on earth, was used as money for soldiers. Someone who will sacrifice their life will be given salt as a form of payment. I want you to stop and think about that, and realizing that money is that which is accepted as value. As ridiculous as it might sound to you and I today, that someone willing to sacrifice their life, regardless of whether they have children or wives, just think about, you're gonna go kill someone and you sign a death warrant legally, lawfully, because you're doing it for the purpose of society at large, that you just might as well die too. Because as the old adage goes along the line, you kill by the sword, you die by the sword. Someone willing to go through that extent, get compensated with salt. It might sound crazy, but in today's world, it's probably a bit crazier, because we use just papers. At least salt, you can create other things from it or add it to other things. But piece of paper, best you can do with it is burn it to get warm, and that's if you have enough. Assuming that it's just to be used independent of its own, just as is.
And if he was lazy or his work was at fault, you know what folks said?
He isn't worth his salt.
Aye. Salt was called salarium. That's where our word salary comes from.
So much that the terminology used today when it comes to someone's reliance on labor, we use salary to define that. The only reason why people rely on their labor to go to work is because they're getting some form of salary. They're getting paid in certain cycles. A salary is a worksman's version of cash flow for an entrepreneur or someone who is financially educated. And the origin of that is from someone willing to sacrifice their life for salt.
Oh, look! Pirate money!
Aye.
The children refer to it as pirate money, but they're referring to gold. And if you know anything about what people in today's world, when I say today's world, I'm referring to anything post-World War One. That's why they call it World War, because they were really changing things about how the world will be defined. And some people back then said, no, you're not going to define the world. Hence, they fought against them in increments. Yes, there are warfare involved in propaganda and all those other things. It's not what we're here to speak of. But prior to modern times, gold was money. In modern times, most people started loosely using that word pirate. And of course, we know piracy deals with the act of piracy, which is just another fancy word for stealing that which isn't yours, taking it by force of arms. But the reality is, the ones who used what these children in this animation refer to as piracy were actually those who control the seas and the land before modern time. And of course, as the saying goes, whoever has the upper hand in any engagement will define history. So now the adult comes in to correct the children on certain financial education when it comes to what these children are referring to as pirate money.
Piece of 8.
Why was it called that?
Here, I'll demonstrate. In a piece of 8, 8 pieces.
Piece of 8 is what they formally call a gold coin.
Why was it called that?
Here, I'll demonstrate. In a piece of 8, 8 pieces fit. Every piece is called a bit. For the bits in each half sits, and out of a half is called 2 bits.
That was one of the ways that they used to forge gold coins. So much in today's world and technology, we still use the term bits. which has its origin in how money and gold was forged. And that term bits is still used technologically because we still use gold in our technology in today's world. And some of the mannerisms of how the ancient goldsmiths used to forge those gold coins is still the same manner used to add gold in our technology today. The device you're using to listen to this has gold in it. And some of the old methodology of how they used to forge coins is also how these gold were applied to the silicones that make up those boards inside your phones.
Correct. Now, these ancient Greek obols, tiniest coins of all, were carried in the mouth. They were so wee small. When a Greek went shopping, think of the axe as he coughed up the price and swallowed the tax.
When coins are used, the education financially being depicted by this wise adult man, or at least what we're supposed to perceive it as in this animation, is when coins were used, which obols were one of the coins used back then, is it was not taxable. When you use natural resource, it is not taxable. So when you start to hear me speak about the ppm in certain ways for you to liquidate beyond just getting USD or something going in your bank account, whereby you can use natural resources as your form of acceptance of value. The markets actually allow you to do that, because after all, these markets are also where people gamble on gold price and silver price. That which people gamble on those markets when you do ppm for the birth certificate, you can pick and choose like shopping to say, this is what I want as a ROI, return on investment. And when that comes in, a taxable event is not triggered on that end of the door. Of course, there are many more ways you can close the doors, but these are perfect examples as to the principles of why certain option exists in a certain way.
They were so wee small. When a Greek went shopping, think of the axe as he coughed up the price and swallowed the tax.
And if you've paid attention so far, they give you an example of what the Romans use as currency, money. Now they're explaining to you what the Moors used as currency, money, which they loosely refer to as pirate money. And they use color spectrum of red in the head and blue in the body, which also signifies something, and the colors of the duck being white, which also signifies something. And then they transition to the money, the coin, natural resources that the Greeks used. You have to realize that North America today, the bully of the rest of the world, is a beneficiary who inherited all these different systems from all these different groups of people from time that they are briefly summarizing based on the currency that they use. And these inheritance that North America, aka the government of the United States, have inherited, to which they build other parts of the world's government from scratch that way after usurpation. They still use these systems, but with contract law and on the inside, rather than generally being publicly available with everyday man.
Now the largest coin is this stone wheel from the island of Yap.
It's too big to steal.
Aye, laddies, that's so. Now there was a time when there was no money in those dark ages of primitive man. You see, money wasn't really needed until...
He's now going to speak about trade by barter. So I assume we all know about that. So we'll just forward this part.
And most successful was a disc with pictures on each side. Along
Along with the coin came the paper bill, backed by the government's name.
Along with a coin came paper bill, backed by a government's name. So someone or a group of people with military might is now acting as the insurance, the backing. When something is backed, they're speaking of insurance in short. That's just another double speak used by wealthy people to refer to insurance. When they tell you it's backed by this, backed by that, that's just insurance. That's where the game was flipped right there.
They both cash good like good cash should. The man yelled just the same. We need money. Convenient money.
Like any model of any business, aka a government, convenience is important to be profitable. In order for the people to be enslaved using money, convenience had to be sold. This is one of the reasons why I always say people are the problems themselves. The search for instant gratification is what caused someone with a very shrewd business state of mind. See, business itself and creativity in business is not the problem, has not been the problem, and will never be the problem. It is the small few who choose to take advantage of others who they know are aloof and are in search of instant gratification. When those small few who are shrewd punish the large for their lethargic way, we get a system of suffrage like what people are experiencing in today's world. Convenience was how physical paper money came by. Those physical paper money was only meant to be a form of statement, literally a statement on a piece of paper that said, I know this money exists, but I want you to pay me this amount for now, and I will use this amount as though it's more than what it is, and then I'll give you back what I owe you. That, ladies and gentlemen, was where the payment of debt only being in gold and silver came about from the Constitution. This clause right here. The payment being given back in the form of gold and silver was the debt owed by the United States to the Moors. AKA the ones who use pirate money, which is gold and silver, to issue those silverbacks, those bills, aka IOU, were meant to be an insurance to say, give me 100 pounds of gold. IOU were meant to be an insurance to say, give me 100 pounds of gold, but assure everyone else in your jurisdiction that I'll be able to use the 100 pounds as though it's twice its worth. And I'm going to give you this writing that I owe you that extra 100 pounds, that you allow me to use this 100 pounds of gold as though that's what it is. I want you to keep track of the reality and the function and how it ties to the Constitution and what was really going on. What they will not do is add those dots together with you. The problem people make is they assume that that payment of gold and silver is supposed to be their liability, when in truth it is that of the United States. And simultaneously people are saying they're without the United States, yet they're trying to claim the satisfaction of debt that the United States has. You're saying you're not United States citizen and you're without the United States, yet you're saying that your payment of debt is gold and silver, especially if you're a Moor or a descendant to which your progenitors are Moors. That means you're saying you owe your own ancestors based on your allegiance with their debtors. It's counterproductive. It's counterintuitive. It's backwards thinking. But if one does not comprehend how it came to life and join the dots, they just wouldn't know. They'll just be regurgitating the stuff they see on social media posts. That's the problem. Financial education is the key that most of these people going on about birth certificate and all these other groups, they lack it.
Like good cash should, the man you're just the same. We need money, convenient money. Cart this stuff around is too absurd. Why can't we store it high and dry and sign for everything we buy? Why can't we store it high and dry and sign for everything we buy? It would be great if payment could be deferred.
Aye, that's exactly what occurred.
And in order for the United States to be able to pay their debt, they subrogated their citizens to start using IOUs so they could take the labor of the people and convert that through good old slavery. See, when I tell you the true slaveholders in North America is not what most people think, and that the Moors, for the lack of a better term, excuse my French, they fucked up too, and that there are many so-called black people that were slave owners. And during the quote-unquote Civil War, there were many slave owners that were black, aka Native Americans, that did not want that to end, because they were the ones who gave gold to the United States, to the members of the United States government, and the IOU that members of the United States government gave those Moors. The United States government went back and took their citizens to commit IOU to them, and in turn they sold their citizens to the Moors to satisfy their IOU to them. They flipped it around by enslaving the people. And the state of mind those Moors had was we're not the one enslaving you. It's your government doing so to us because we allowed them to start doing business in this land. These are the intricacies and the subtleties when it comes to the link to money, the link to things you readily hear and know about that would not completely be told to you. Because if you knew it, your perspective on how all this thing works would completely change.
And sign for everything we buy. It would be great if payment could be deferred.
Aye, that's exactly what occurred.
They use deference of payment as attraction for the citizens of the United States. And in order for that deference of payment of IOU to be used as attraction, they had to create a system of contract and tracking that contract using the birth certificate. If you realize that that birth certificate was the thing that was physically exchanged for slave owners back then, I'm sure you've seen the slave catcher's card and things like that. I'm sure you have somewhere in the internet. Those would not have been issued unless the birth certificate had existed. But when you do your research further on the birth certificate, you will realize that that was what was exchanged as receipts when these slaves were transferred. And they used to tell you something about voluntary servitude. You've heard of that also. That voluntary servitude is based on the deferral of payment to satisfy it. So now the United States government would sell the slaves that have IOUs to them that were reeled in with deferrals of payment and say, look, in order for you to satisfy this deferral of payment quicker, because you gave us an IOU, go work for this man or woman, which were the Moors. So they would give the Moors the birth certificate of the United States citizen back then. That's the harsh reality many would not tell you.
Came checks and credit cards and purchasing on time. When spending grows so easy, it's hard to save a dime.
So now, while that's been done, the United States government successfully usurped the Moors, but they perpetuated the system that they've perfected as to keeping that IOU system up. They have perfected the essence of deferring payments by creating a new system of diner's card, they used to be called. Then it's credit cards with larger banks and things like that.
This is the way credit cards used to work. Visa, Diners Club, American Express, MasterCard. They all work the same way, but they're all going to change. This is the sweep of the future. And this is International Verifact, the company that makes that little machine in a plant north of Toronto. This gizmo is the built-in telephone so the credit card reader can dial up the computer and see if you're good for it. This is a smart card, and it's the future. That gold seal actually covers a tiny computer that remembers everything, how much money you've spent, how much you have left. John Elliott of MasterCard in New York explains just how powerful a smart card is.
This is an example of what it would look like if you could peel away the back of our existing card, the card with the chip in it. What you'd see is a chip with data storage, and another separate chip over here with the processor itself. The processor has the same processing capability as an Apple IIe. It has a 64K memory and an 8-bit processor.
With it, you can't overspend your limit, and fraud is almost impossible. The card's inserted, a personal identification number punched in. The card itself authorizes the transaction and remembers how much you've spent. Right.
It became formally accredited, aka formally accepted as a form of payment.
Most men keep a family well fed today, clothed and sufficiently warmed, but in the main their wives complain from habits they have formed. We need money! Boy, we need money! It's finally reached the stage that we adored. We're glad we don't need fish or roast or tiger skins or nanny goats. Our money's fine now, all that we need is more.
But unless something's behind it, in the treasury, something solid and secure, like me, we haven't.
So now that that system of IOU has been secured from what they tested out from their creditors, there being United States, their creditor being the Moors, and after they've usurped them, they now turn to the one issuing out the IOU and getting people to consent to using the IOU. This time around, the people doesn't even have to voluntarily sign IOUs. They create the IOUs for you and hand it to you for you to use by accepting the IOU as though you are the one owning them. The game is very, very, very cold. And by the act of use, the consent of use of that IOU, you make yourself the backup to it.
But unless something's behind it, in the treasury, something solid and secure, like me.
Therefore, putting yourself into a position of a serf, you now become the insurance to it, because you are the ones engaging in the true labor, and labor is the value to society. And if you cannot determine the worth of your labor, aka knowing how and what it truly means to be an entrepreneur, as harsh as it sounds, the reality is you're no different than that slave being sold on a podium where the birth certificate is transferred to the Moor once upon a time who owned the slave bought to satisfy the IOU from the United States to the Moor before he was usurped. So now it's just been voluntarily done. See what I mean now in patron posts when I tell you the birth certificate is no different than a receipt given to the slave owner that bought a slave? These days they have perfected it by getting you to voluntarily participate in it because of lack of financial education. And most importantly, the fact that the concept of money itself is fluid. It is what people accept as a medium of exchange, as that which is valuable as a consideration for something else.
Pure, like me. But unless something's behind it, in the treasury, something solid and secure, like me. something solid and secure. Like me, we have inflation.
Inflation?
In other words, when people's faith in the money goes a little bit too high than it really is, inflation occurs. When people's faith, who are the secured essence that's backing that piece of paper I owe you, when it goes down, a depression occurs. The concept of money is a no-brainer once you really get it. If you are the one backing up that piece of paper, when your faith in it goes down, all the way to the point where it just crashes, not a burst of the bubble, but it completely crashes, they call that a depression. It's because the people themselves get depressed. Actually, physically, what backs it up is depressed. When people have far too much faith in it and depend far too much on it, inflation occurs. And of course, with that, usually people tend to get more taxes, which is the cost for money, interest rate.
That's a mess. Your money would be worth less and less. I might take this hatful, I dare say, to buy what your piggy bank would buy today. $1 wouldn't be worth the paper it's printed on. Ooh. But that's not today. Oh. Good man.
See what he just did to that bill? I wonder what else you carry around in your pocket today that looks just like that. Even though in this animation they use $20. What else has the Washington on its face in today's world that has those strips right in the middle? It's almost as if the $100 bill that has the face of Washington in it, that has those strips in it, they're letting you know that it's just nothing but paper and is easy to tear and piece back together. This is in 1967. Now, do your own research and see what year that version of $100 bill that has those blue strips in it, what year was it released? Was it post 1967 or not? They're telling you the jewels before it even occurred. It's just a piece of paper that can be put together with just a thread. He tore it up and sewed it back together. Interesting enough, the $20 bill does not have Washington on its face. It's the $100 bill that has Washington on its face. These people were telling you what they're about to do long before it occurred. When you see those strips on $100, this right here, it's a symbolism telling you it's just a piece of paper that's been remodeled, being handed to you that you're accepting as full faith. Now look at what this character does with it again.
But that's not today. Oh, good man. I It's what you can buy with what you've got. That's what counts. It's a question.
He took a gold coin from the bottom of the hat that was filled with all that cash, and it's telling you all that cash you just threw away is worth the same as that one gold coin. And he emphasized the fact that what you can purchase with it is what matters, not how much of it you stack. In other words, that one gold can buy the same thing that all that stack can. So in today's world, when you see some people throw around a bunch of cash thinking they have money, rappers and stuff like that, that is the first, the most obvious, and the quickest sign for you to know someone who has a broke state of mind, who knows nothing about how money works. One, it's just a piece of paper. Two, it's worth less before it leaves their hand as they're spraying it and touch the ground, because they've printed about 20,000 more when contagious rate, which creates inflation, which decreases the value of what they're flaunting around. The currency, whether you use the dinar, the yuan, the dollar, pesos, those change and fluctuate, but the gold and silver itself remains. It's just a weight, but what you purchase it with is what moves about. Therefore, the metal itself is always more valuable.
Of economics.
Economics?
Aye, it only means household management. It's from an old Greek word. Household management, that's budgeting, you can't.
Economics is a Greek word that means household management. Management of your own monies, a budget, which in short for the everyday man is just something called a balance sheet. A financial statement where it shows your cash flow, your income, your expense, your liabilities. Many people don't even use that. You need to have your own internal economy. Once you have that and you have it in front of you, you have a better perspective on what your relationship with money is. That's why I always implore people in some of the business one-on-one videos to have a balance sheet. When you have eyes on how money is moving in and out from you, it will change something in your neural pathways as to how you relate to money. And something will just change about your reality. You will see money differently. You will comprehend money differently. Because all that it is at the end of the day is just accounting.
Greek word. Household management. Aye, financial discipline. Let's say your income is like a pie. There's a piece for everything you buy. You have to pay the rent.
And you have to buy clothes, groceries.
Let's not go to the depressing portion. That's quite obvious. So we'll just skip forward a bit here.
You see, the government provides, through the taxes we pay, our bridges and schools and places to play.
Builds the county road or the modern highway.
Well, let me now tell you the game to this. Presumably, the taxes are supposed to go back to benefiting the public at large, building highways, building schools, so and so. The gain to that is most of these are really short-term expenses that are not perpetual. And if it's continuous, they quite often write it off and get the money back nonetheless. And most of the time before roads are fixed, it takes a long time. It's already cost most people many permanent damage that they don't even realize. All those bumps in your vehicles, it's the reason why most people have back pains and crap when they start getting into their late 30s and 40s. They don't think back to those road bumps as to how it affects the nerves clumping up and all their joints and the fluid getting stuck and all the stress accumulating. Some simple things they just go on every day in their vehicles back and forth every day. And there's some people, it physically damages the vehicle and they have to pay for it. Things like that. And as for the schools, the education system that the taxes are supposed to build, we all know those don't educate you financially. It just prepares you to be someone else's slave. That's the short end of the stick, which is quite shitty. And there's more to it, but again, so we won't be too depressing with this. I think you can put two and two together as to how the formal education fails many people. All it gives to people is just a sense of entitlement by writing once again on a piece of paper, no different than money, that hey, you're now capable of doing this because you spent this amount of time of your valuable life sitting in a box, listening to someone, engaging in limited social activity, and competing amongst one another in an unhealthy way without knowing how to work with people, or broadening your horizon into the real world. But don't worry, that's exactly what we need, because you just be another big corporation and slave. That's the short end of what educations do, with a few exceptions who are aware of that because of the financial education they've received from home. Therefore, they just use the networking system that's really available to their benefit. But the majority of people don't do that. They're just content with the mundane.
called for in the budget. Departments of police and of water.
Of course, we know what they do with the water and what they put in there that screws you up. And of course, those who are supposed to protect you, which is the departments of the municipal police, they're the ones fucking people up. These days, if you dial 911, you have about 7 out of 10 chances of getting your ass kicked, being verbally abused, and even getting arrested and sued. Because if someone is giving you a summons into a court, they're suing you. Why? Because you needed assistance. If you're not careful, because most of those people that work in those police departments, their IQ is not quite up there. And they are encouraged through their conditioning and training and seminars to not care much for that. Because, well, they know they mostly hire people who just know how to follow order. No different than someone who just went to school to be an employee. But this time around, someone with a bit more childhood issues and a big body, looking for positions to justify why they feel a little bit weak on the inside to overcompensate on the outside. That's what your taxes is going to. And I'm not quite certain if you've ever been into areas with high median income or GDP areas that are pretty high. Rarely do you ever see police departments or hear sirens or see campaign and marketing or publicity or public relations of the police department, because those particular areas have more financial education, so they don't emphasize those things. The less financial education a geographical bound has, the more you will see presence of police departments and their marketing and things like that, just so you know.
And fire, the various courts, the juries they hire, aeroplanes, ships, and the care they require, all are in the box. Deadlines fall, but without our taxes, we would have no government at all. In budgeting a home and a government too, it really should show a new.
And that's how I became rich, making the little slices grow.
Investment is not what this man is speaking about. What most people lack when it comes to financial education is how to take what they have and multiply it. Giving a third party your money is to gamble in the market. For people who use your money, who use OPM, they're not going to stop you. In fact, they want you to. 401k, even if it's self-directed IRA, which has a lot of rules and limitation, other people are still using it. Now, if you know how to write off early penalty fees for taking monies out of your 401k, good. If you know how to use trust, good. But most people don't. So most people's perspective of investment of multiplying monies is giving the third party to do it for them. Sure, in business, there are those who are cash providers, but aka investors. But you have to be smart and competent for you to do that. You just don't give it to some third-party financial advisor to do that for you. They're just seeking after numbers to meet quotas so they can get their commissions. They don't give a crap about your money. Financial education is the key for you to know how to use your money to work for you. But then you have to know what you are naturally good at for you to go into that field in any way. And if you want to use the realm of the birth certificate and PPM, you sure as hell need financial education.
You shouldn't be idle and must be put to work, you know.
Oh, yeah? How about all that idle dough you got stashed away?
Oh, no, lads. This is just petty cash. Moves in and out each day. If I sat on my money, I might just as well be stranded on a desert island for all the good it would do me. I couldn't eat it, couldn't wear it, couldn't use it. Ooh, I can't.
In other words, never have emotional attachment to money. Money is like water. It loves and needs to move for it to be healthy and useful. It's a tool to be used to get more. That's how money is meant to be used, regardless of whether it comes in the form of a piece of paper or not.
Currents circulate. Like the ocean currents control the world's weather, you see. Circulating money controls the economy. Money must keep moving to fulfill its obligation.
And if you squeeze it too tight, you'll stop its circulation.
That's a funny one. And how true?
We don't want that to happen to our money. We want our piggy bank to grow.
Well, making a shrewd investment is the soundest way I know. This way, please, prospects. May I introduce our president and the members of the board?
It's telling you for you to properly invest, you need trust. It's telling you who the members of the board are, who the president is. And if you notice, all the different members look the same in the image being depicted, but they carry different roles. That means it has to be a private trust, in-house, close control. These are the analogies being given to you by these visual depictions.
Such a talented management should never be ignored. Not a weak link in the chain. Now then.
And of course, I assume you know the hand underneath the coat on the thumb is also a Masonic symbol.
It behooves you when investing to investigate the facts, and you'll profit. Is everything clear?
No. But it sounds like a good deal.
Fine. Sign here.
Contract is how all of it is done. But before you enter into the contract, like I always say here, before you use any document, know what it does. That is the most important part.
Hey, I'm inviting you to come join the patron page. Not only do you get access to documents, posts, and videos that you will never find on any other platforms, you also get instant access to webinars that otherwise will cost far more. And we speak of things that usually we would not be able to speak of on any other platforms far more freely. On top of that, you get the opportunity to send me monthly questions along with everyone else's questions, so you can see other people going through similar circumstances. You never know. What you think might be a stupid question is quite often very valid. On top of that, you get access to monthly question and answer archives from several years back from people who have gone through it and people who are going through it. Get information regarding things you experience daily that you didn't even know you could take advantage of when it comes to business, work, or other personal things. There's a community of people where you can bounce information off of, and they can give you some tips and tricks based on what they're currently going through in their respective venues that you might maybe want to link up with. And there's a high likelihood you're not going to find them anywhere else. And you also get the access to directly send me messages. Oh, and also if you are a tier 4 member, you get access to yet another monthly meeting where we actually answer as much questions as we can, and we're between an hour and a half, and in some cases up to 4 hours. In addition to that, we also show some exclusive lessons that are not going to be posted on Patreon or anywhere else but the tier 4 meeting alone. So come forth, come join the 500 plus people already on Patreon. And in some cases, we even give certain things out. And while you're at it, you might want to check out the store, subtlesubstanceservices.com. There might be a few things you want to pick up in there.